Alright, so we are here for the next phase of ReactJS, and previously we have learned how to install React and how to create components both in functional component and class components, and also we have used a little bit of props in React. So now today's topic is again React, and what we are going to learn today, we are going to learn about state and some basic ideas and commonly mistakes which is done through this state. We are going to learn about that. Alright, so topics of discussions today are state versus props, a little bit comparative discussion on state versus props, and next we are going to create class component state and basic functional component state, and after that we are going to discuss or learn about common mistakes in state. Okay, and end of this session we are going to have questions and answers. So if there is any doubt related to today's class, we are going to discuss about that. These questions can come from my side also, because I am presenting this. It doesn't mean that I know everything. You can also have any inputs from your sides. Okay, so props versus state. So first of all, let's understand props get passed to the component. It means if we are using any child component, I'll show you my coding screen. So in this scenario, this welcome component is being used in app.js, and app.js is the parent component, and inside this welcome component we are passing 1, 2 and 3, we are passing 2 properties, which is becoming 2 props, and we are calling inside welcome component. Sorry, I am calling 3 props. One of the children is also over here, that is the p tag, so that's why it is coming as 3 props, and this is coming from the app.js, I mean the parent. So that's why it is called, I mean the way it is stated over here, props get passed to the component from parent to child. In the other hand, state is managed within the component. So what state is going to do is, we are not passing state from parent to child, it is being written inside our component. Second is prop is used as functional parameters, as I have shown you right now that it is coming as functional parameter. And the other hand, state is a variable declared within the function body. Props are immutable. It means in child component we cannot change the props. If we are sending a props stating a name or message or any number, we cannot change it in our child component where state can be changed. Last one is props. For a functional component we basically call it as props, and for class component we have to mention this method to call the props. And for state, for functional component we basically use state hook, and in class component we are going to use this method, and this dot state is the way of using state in class component. Okay, that's it. Now we will go and create some component with state, but before I go, I want you to understand some basic functionality of class. So class is basically JavaScript concept, and I'm going to create one class over here. So for that, not inside, I'll create one HTML, name it index.html, and I'll write a basic HTML over here, which is .type HTML, and then HTML tag, Inside we are having head tag, and inside head tag we are having title, and in title I'll simply write document. And in body, I'm having body over here. In body I'm going to call a script. So basically like this, script source, and the name of the source file is main.js, and I need to create this main.js file over here, main.js. Now we are going to understand what is class in JavaScript. To define a class, we basically use, we have to use class syntax or class word and the name of the class. I'm going to use person over here, and this is it. So this is our definition of class. Now inside class we must have a constructor, and in constructor we must, if we want, we can pass some parameters like that name, age, and job. Inside constructor we are going to use this dot name and assign to name. Similarly for others, this dot is equals to age, this dot job equals to job. And also we can define a function over here. Let's multiply is the function, or I'll say greet as a function, and it will return a string which is hello everyone. Alright, so as you can understand, if you are coming from Angular background or little bit of knowledge in React background, you can understand why this functions in Angular is being written in this way. So basically Angular is using class concept, so that's why we have to write a function inside a class without function syntax. Like if I'm going to write a function outside this class, I should have a function keyword over here like this. But if I'm using this function keyword over here, it will definitely throw me an error, and it will show me that syntactical error over here. So we're not going to use that. So this is the way we are creating a class. Now we have to call this class. So I'll take another constant which is person1 equals to new and person, and inside person I am going to send 3 parameters, which is name, first name is Sujit, and then age, it might be 18 near about, and then job is maybe IPS. Okay, this is not me, this is a imaginary character, and I'm going to console log this. Console log person1 as person1, spelling mistake. Alright, now if you look at this file right now, I need to go to this Explorer. call this file in our browser. So let's see. As you can see, there is nothing in body, but in console we are getting a person object which is saying that age is 18, job is IPS, name is Subhajit. Now if we want to call this function, we can call this function also. I'm going to use console.log person1 dot greet. Now if you look at our browser again, so it is having the greet hello everyone. So this is the basic concept of using class in JavaScript. In JavaScript, how we use class is the basic concept. Now we are moving forward in ReactJS. I'm going to close these two files as you don't need right now. So today we are going to discuss about state. So let me create one file for state. I'll create a file, name it as message.js. So first of all, I'm going to use class component. So I'll import React as class component. So I'm going to use component over here and from React. Now I'm going to define this JS as a class. So I'll use class word and I'll name the class. It is message, and then I'll use this component concept using extend component, and now the class has been defined. Now inside class, as we have learned that we need to use this constructor, so I'm going to use constructor. Although it's not mandatory, but for functionality we need to have this constructor, and we need to add super also. We are using super because we extended this class as a component, and to component class. Component is also a predefined class under React. So and the call has to be made. So that's why this call has to be made inside constructor. That's why we're using this super over here. And then I'm going to define our first state, which is like this dot state, and then it's an object. So I'll have message key over here, and the value of this message is welcome visitor. Alright, so state has been declared, so constructor has been declared. Now we need to render this class. I'm going to render it using render method, and inside render I'm going to return. As from previous class, we have learned about this fragment, get fragments. So I'm going to use that. It's really very cool to use fragments. And inside fragments, I'm going to use one h1 tag. And inside h1 tag, I'm going to have this message, this dot state dot message. Alright, now the next part is we need to export this class. So exporting way is right now we are going to use export default, and then class name, which is message. It is being exported. Now we need to import this class in our app.js. So I'm going to comment this 3 right now, and first I need to import it over here. So import the class name from components slash message, and now we're going to use this over here, message, like this. Now we are waiting for this compiling part. Okay, as you can see, welcome visitor has been displayed in our UI, as because it's coming from state and we are using that state over here. Over here. Alright, now what we are going to do, we are going to add a button over here, under this line, and after clicking on that button, it will basically change the message over here. So to do that, what I am doing right now, I am taking a HTML button, and inside button I will simply right click here to change message, or let it be like this, and we are going to use click function. So in React we have to write click method, on click method, like in camel case. So on and then click, and then in curly braces we are going to use an arrow function, and then I'm going to use a function named this dot change message. We need to define this, and we're going to define before render. Alright, so from the class of JavaScript we understand why we need to use this word over here, and this is the way we write a function inside a class. So it's all familiar right now, and I'm going to change this message from here. So to change a message inside, to change the state, we need to add this dot set state method. And so before I write one more line over here, I want to describe you like what is set state method. So this method basically accepts an object which is nothing but new state of component. So that's why we are going to use set state method and message, and the message we want to define right here. I'll simply say goodbye for now. Alright, so we have used this function over here, and this button, I guess when we click on this button the message will get changed. Let's see what is happening in our browser. There we go. Now this is a very simple example of state in class component. Now on the same kind of component I'm going to create a functional component to use a state. For that I'm going to create another component over here and will name it as basic, or maybe state function, like this, and .js. Now here we are going to import React from React. So this is the basic difference between a class component and functional component. So in class component we need to use that component method over here, but in functional component we don't need that, and we will define a function, simply const, the function name is basic state, or maybe state function like this, and fat arrow symbols, and then curly braces. So this is it, and I'm going to export this. So like export default, and then state function, and inside our function body we are going to first return something, and also we are going to use this React fragments, and here I'm going to simply type a message each one, and message would be like, again, welcome people. Now I'm going to use that in our app.js. So I'll comment this out and call that class over here. From name of that body and file is state function. Alright, and I'm going to use this over here. Simply uncomment and paste it over here, and it's working as expected. Welcome people. Now we're going to use a state over here. Before we use state, so this is basically a hook kind of concept in React, which is introduced maybe in 2018, and this is a very useful concept of React hook, because before 2018 state functional component doesn't have any state kind of functionalities or state method, but after introducing to that hook we can use functional component as class component also. So using a state, we are going to use this use state method, and we are going to define a state over here like const, let it be like message, comma, and set message is kind of my future functionalities, is I'm going to use later on, and then I'm going to use state, and inside use state I'm simply going to have this message. And then in h1 tag I'm going to have curly braces, and inside curly braces I'm going to use this message. That's it. Now if you look at this, we're still seeing the same value over here, but the difference is in code. So previously we were using this message as a normal h1 tag. Now we are using from this useState concept. Now we need to add some functionalities. So right now I'm going to add a button over here, and I will have a onClick function like this, and then I'll add a function over here and name it as change message, and simply write here it's a goodbye, and the function we need to define this function. So let's write a function change message equals to, I'm going to use arrow function, and then we are going to use this set message over here, set message, and inside set message whatever the text you want to pass, you have to pass it over here, and simply passing goodbye, and that's it. Alright, so now I click on this button, and as you can see, this message has been changed. Well, there is another way of setting up this on-click method, that is without defining a function in this functional body. So I'll write another button over here, and instead of using this kind of method, I'm going to use inline method, which is set. I'm going to directly use the set message from here, and I'm going to pass a parameter over here, that is welcome back right now, and the text will be here, welcome back. Now let's look at our browser. So we are having two buttons. So first I'll click goodbye. It is showing the correct message. Now I'll type welcome back. It is also showing that welcome back message. So these are the two basic ways to set a state using functional component. But today we are mostly going to use this class component. So I'm going to close this JS file from here, and I'm going to create another component, and I'll also close this message.js. I'm going to create another component, and we'll name it as maybe count.js. I'm going to import React and also a component. Give me a moment, guys, because I'm getting some noise from other room. I'll just tell them to little bit. Sorry for that interruption. Okay, I'm going to use component over here, and then from React. And here we're going to define our class count extends component at a constructor over here, and inside constructor I'm going to use props, and then super method, props, and then I'm going to set our state. This dot state equals to an object, and object having one key, count, and the value is 0. Alright, now we are going to render our component. And then return although I'm typing many codes over here, you can use React snippet which you need to install in your Visual Studio Code, and that will become much more faster. Okay, so Gopal, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now,
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, okay.
But don't know why Gopal is not.
Okay, okay. Okay, so let's continue. As we are recording, we can still have the record file with us. So, okay, so inside our return, we are going to have one h1 tag, which is basically we say what is the value of count into this dot state dot count. Alright, and we are going to add a functionality which is basically increment this number of count. So I'll add a button over here, and inside button I'm going to write one click method, and here I'm going to use that arrow function, and I'm going to use one function which is this dot increment. Alright, so we have to define this function also. So I'm defining over here like this. That's it. Now, okay, we need to export this. So let's export it first. Export default, and then the name of this class, which is count. Alright, now we need to import this class in our app.js. I'll simply comment this one and import over here count from count.js. Okay, spelling looks correct, and over here we are using count. Now let's look at our browser, how it is reacting. Okay, so it is as expected. We are seeing count and the value 0, and a button which is saying increment. Now the first mistake, basically the freshers means who are new to React from JavaScript methodology does over here is setting a state value. So I'm going to set a state value like normal JavaScript, this dot state dot count equals to this dot state dot count plus 1, and I'm going to log a console over here, console dot log, which is this dot state dot count. Now we'll understand the behavior of browser and React. Okay, so it has been compiled. Now let me open that console log. Let me clear this. Okay, now I'm clicking on increment, but as you can see, there is no change in UI, although there is a change in our console. So console has shown us the correct one, but UI doesn't. So the reason behind this, UI is not rendering, but it's changing the console. Okay, so this is the first mistake basically a newcomer in React does, who has the concept of JavaScript methodology. So here we need to use setState function. So I'm simply going to comment this one, and after that I'm going to use this dot set state, and inside here I'm going to use count, which is this dot set state dot count plus 1. All right, sorry, there is no like this. Okay, now let's see what is happening. Now you can see this count is getting incremented in UI, but the result in console is not the one which is in UI. So it's because we are using this asynchronous methodology, so no one is waiting for other part to get completed. So that's why console log is getting defined before this set state methodology. But we need to have a console.log after this set state function being triggered. So for that we need to use we are going to have a callback function right after this curly braces. And here if I write the same console, we'll have the exact result what we are looking for. I will identify it as a callback. Now if you look at our browser, you can see increment, the console which is out of callback function is still 0, but the inside callback we are having the same value as we are having in our UI. So this is the second mistake which basically the newcomer in ReactJS does. So to avoid this, we need to add this callback function. Now this is a very simple situation of functionalities or incrementing a value. So I want to increment this value for 5 times. Now I'm going to add another function which is like 5 time increment, and inside this function I'm going to call this function for 5 times, which is basically some kind of weird methodology, but to understand this we can use this kind of scenario. 1 2 3 4 5, that's perfect. Now in our render method, instead of calling increment, we are going to call this method. So what we are expecting after clicking on this increment, this count value will become first time for 5 and next time 10 as it is. Okay, let's see what we are getting in this kind of method. As you can see, we are getting 5 times of console log from that increment functionalities, and also callback as if 5 times, but we are getting 1 instead of 5. So why this is happening? This is happening because React make group multiple set state calls into single update for better performance. Like as it is a kind of scenario, so React made it as a group multiple set state calls into single update. So that's why all the 5 times increment functions has been dumped into one scenario. But to prevent this kind of situation, we have an option. So I'll use that option. So I'm going to comment all this out right now, and I'm going to write again this dot set state method, but this time we are going to set a functional parameter over here, which is like this. And then inside the functional parameter, I'm going to use pre-state, that is basically previous state. You can use any name over here, and here I'm going to add this count as a, I'm taking this previous state dot count plus 1, and also plus 1, and okay, I need one more. This is the callback function, so I'll use that callback method, and inside callback I'm going to console.log callback, and this dot state dot count, and also the same console.log over here. Now let me look in the browser. Let's see what is the return right now. As you can see, it has returned 5 as expected, and it is incrementing 5 times. But in this console, which is basically the synchronous console over here, so that's 5 over here, but in the callback we are getting the same value as we are having in UI. So the purpose of this function of this method is to update previous change state, which is stored in previous state parameter. We need to pass the function as an argument to set state method instead of passing in an object. So previously we are passing in one object, but instead of passing in an object, we are passing a function as an argument. So and this is it, and I think this is all for today's class. Because we are using state, we have learned a few more stuffs, which is basically how to add state function and what are the common mistakes usually a first time React developer does for creating a state method. So alright, we are done for today's session. I'm going to if you guys have any questions and answers, you can we can just discuss right now. All right, so all of your mic is mute, so you can have any discussion. We can discuss right now.
No, Shubhadeep, no questions till now. I need to check that. Can you tell me that which component, functional component or class component are mainly used in React? Means you state property,
So,
React.
okay, so basically before 2018, it was consider that class component is very useful methodology to use state kind of stuff. So it was considered the better way of using a component. But right now, as React has introduced its hook concept, so we can have the same state method in our functional component also.
Also, yeah. Then I think mainly recent React are forcing to use that functional component mainly. Right?
Yes, this in React is telling that we can use functional component. Yeah, right. And most of the developers who are coming from JavaScript or mainly not from JavaScript, from other programming language, they prefer this functional component rather than this class component.
Yeah, functional component, class component is a little bit complex, and functional component is
right. Right, because of this syntax, I mean, this syntax, it makes this class component a little bit complex. If sometime a developer forget to use this method, it will show error. Where in a functional component, we don't need to bother about this. We can simply use directly state or set step method.
React hook.
Right. React hook. Alright, so I'm going to stop this recording.